I found a code for the yelling. Field training is all about evaluations and testing you. If you watch any of my other videos, you know that I am a stickler for hygiene. So we're gonna talk about that. You might not have time for all the time, it's for your hair to dry. The Air Force officer world is about 70 to 80% white male. That powers you tested positive for COVID. He took this as an opportunity to play cupid. My field training was literally a mix of like a fever dream and a love story. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of the field training series. So in part 1 I gave you some tips and tricks, but in part 2 I'm going to be telling you about my experience and kind of sort of where those tips and tricks came from. So I went to field training in 2021, so this was during COVID time. So instead of going to Maxwell Air Force Base, we went to Camp Shelby, which was not up to Air Force standards. Not gonna lie, I'm a little jealous of you Maxwell babies, but that's okay, that's okay. Alright, so TD0, my then boyfriend, now husband Lucas, and I got up super early because I think our flight was at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. And yes, we both got the same show. We went to field training at the same time, so our NCOs did an amazing job of getting us both on the same flight and sitting right next to each other. We get to the airport and we have these big, huge duffel bags that everyone's staring at us, but the airline people automatically know that it's military, so they check us in for free. We had 2 flights, so once we got to our second flight, that's kind of when we started seeing some other field training people and getting to know them. While we were on the plane with them, there are some that were trying to learn word knowledge, but this is why I always tell cadets to prepare before they get to field training. Do not prepare while you're at field training. If you don't memorize that quote, you're not going to memorize it on the plane or the bus. Doing it on the plane or the bus, like, bro, at this point, either you know it or you don't. So we finally make it to Mississippi, and this is kind of where my tips and tricks come into play, because I told y'all to pack your bag in a way that is easy for you to carry. And that's because I met a girl there who packed her bag in a really weird way. It was super hard for her to carry, and she was falling behind, so much so that I actually had to go back there, free up one of my hands, and help her carry it. So now we're at Camp Shelby, and obviously this is where the yelling begins. But let me tell you, I found a code for the yelling. Field training is all about evaluations and testing you and trying to push you to your limits. The yelling is one of the strategies to do that. So what I found out was that when they yell at you, you yell louder. This is what I mean by that. What's your name? What's your name? And you're gonna be like, Cadet Powers! They want to test how well you respond to stress and yelling. And when you respond in a way that you sound confident, or at least look confident, what they're gonna do is they're gonna put a check in their head and they're gonna be like, okay, moving on to the next victim. We're still on TD0. So later on, all my stuff is packed up, and I noticed that I'm not feeling great. Now, that morning, I wasn't feeling great, but I credit it to being nervous about field training. But that night, I was like, something's not necessarily right. TD1, they wake us up in the nice, lovely way that they do. And when I wake up and go to stand at attention, I notice that only one of my eyes were open. You know, they're doing their field training thing, so I'm not saying anything yet. I'm just like, but while I'm standing there at attention, I know that one of my eyes is not opening. It feels swollen. There is crust encrusting this thing closed with like dried up fluids. I'm so sorry, that's disgusting. You have to know, I have to tell you. I mean, after that, I just go to the bathroom, wipe it all off, put my hair in a bun, and I'm ready to go. Now, for the next 3 days, I felt terrible, and my eye felt and looked terrible, but I was running off of pure adrenaline. Like, I just wanted to be there and I really wanted to do well, so I was just pushing through, y'all. So finally on TD3, which is really our day 4, we go get COVID tested. After that, we carry on with the rest of our day, but then later on they pull me aside. They're like, Cadet Powers, you tested positive for COVID. They put me in a van to go back to my dorm room so I can gather all of my stuff. Now, I was doing just fine. I was like, okay, it's whatever. I was very calm, just putting all my stuff together. But then an FCO comes in and he's like, Cadet Powers, I heard you have COVID. I just wanted to say, God bless you. God be with you. Immediately I started crying. But after that, I just started freaking out. I was like, oh my God, is this so bad that I need Jesus to be with me and to be blessed? So I'm like packing up my bags with like tears rolling down and like getting soaked up by my mask. It was crazy. I felt like I was in a movie. So I go back to the van. Now the NCO that was driving the van, she did an amazing job calming me down and just talking to me. But then she gets a phone call, and the phone call tells her that she needs to get 2 more cadets. She turns back to me. She's like, we have to go get Cadet so-and-so and Cadet and I'm like, Eriabe? And she's like, yes, Eriabe. If you don't know, Eriabe is the last name of my boyfriend. Both him and I have really distinct last names, so I knew exactly who she was talking about. When you go to field training, you're gonna see that they purposely separate everybody who goes to the same detachment together. So when you actually see someone from your detachment for like those 3 seconds, it just feels like a piece of home, and you're like, let alone seeing your own boyfriend. So we were both ecstatic. So because this was the first time in the world that everybody was dealing with COVID, The logistics weren't as smooth as I think field training usually is. There was a lot of I don't knows at first, which I think really kind of freaked me and some of the other cadets out as far as like where are we quarantining, how long are we quarantining for, where are we going. They were answered later though. So they dropped us off somewhere else in the base, and basically we were just in quarantine bays or quarantine barracks. When we got there, it was around dinner time, so they gave us MREs to eat for dinner, and that was the first time that I even noticed that I couldn't taste any of the food. We ended up quarantining for 10 days, and those first few days were kind of heavenly because that was the first time where I actually got to recuperate and recover and just sleep. So finally, when we were done quarantining, they threw us back into another shell. We're all separated again, and it was game time again. So if you didn't know, you're obviously gonna sleep with the same gender as you, so you dorm together, you wake up together, go to sleep together, but in the middle of the day, you all separate and go to your different flights. So my boyfriend figured out that one of the girls in his flight dormed right next to me. So he took this as an opportunity to play cupid. So one day I'm in the laundry room with this other girl, and we're both doing our laundry, and I'm taking off my name tape, and she looks at it and she's like, wait, are you Cadet Powers? She comes back, she's like, I have something for you, and she gives me this form 341. But when I open the form, it's a note from Lucas. I still have that note, look. And on the back, there's a note. It was just the sweetest thing ever. I literally felt like I was in the movie. So I got one of my Form 341s. I gave it to her, and then she gave it to him. And we were just continuously doing that for a few days. Like, you're not gonna find a better love story than that at field training, to be honest. So that was my experience. As you can see, my field training was literally a mix of like a fever dream and a love story. So let's talk about some of the things that I noticed when I got to field training. One of the first things that I noticed when I arrived at field training was the lack of diversity. Now, obviously, this doesn't reflect field training and how they run their operations. I just feel like from my point of view, it was just so crazy to see that. If you didn't know this already, the Air Force is actually working on the diversity aspect of our branch. The Air Force officer world is about 70 to 80% white male. So when I got to field training, I just remember that there were times where I was standing there looking around and kind of thought to myself, nobody really looks like me. And I really want to point this out in case some of you might look like me and you're not as surprised as I was when I first got there. And similar to my last advice that I gave to my females, you also deserve to be there, so don't let the stats deter you from thinking so. Okay, so let's move on. When you get to field training, you will find out that not everybody has the same level of hygiene as you do. Now, if you watch any of my other videos, you know that I am a stickler for hygiene. So we're gonna talk about that. In part 1 of my field training video, I told y'all that y'all needed to bring extra underwear. But today I'm gonna give you another reason why you need to bring extra underwear. Now ladies, when you get to field training, you are literally sweating all day, every day. You are required to shower at least twice a day, but oftentimes those twice a days will land in the mornings and at nighttime, and sometimes you don't get those in between the day showers. So because of that, I highly suggest that you bring extra underwear so that the times where you don't get a middle of the day shower, you're at least able to change your undergarments. Also, all the females love to ask me about the hair situation. I personally felt like I had plenty of time to do my hair and do different hairstyles. The only thing I feel like you might not have time for all the time is for your hair to dry. But you do always have time to put into a hairstyle. And now that we have new hair regulations, I just can't see a reason why nobody can get their hair done. On that same note of hygiene, I just want to say that I'm a girl's girls. I just don't like being dirty. I don't like dirt. I don't like being sweaty. So that aspect of field training was just like, I just didn't like it, because you're out there in the sun, you're doing scenarios, you're doing paintball, and for some people that's really fun, but for me, a really girly girl, I wasn't attracted to it as much as some other people were. So if you're like me, just understand that for the next 2 weeks while you're at Maxwell, you will be looking dusty and crusty, and that might hurt your soul. Other than that, I did have a fun time at field training, especially with my flight. For me, it was really easy to connect with my flight because I didn't come in on their TD0, I came in on their TD3 or 4 actually. So they were actually very accommodating to me and trying to get to know me, make sure I was feeling comfortable. Also, I was just that cadet who had COVID, who just quarantined, it would be there for almost a month. So they had a lot of questions for me, and it was basically a conversation starter. Yeah, we all got along really well. The scenarios went great for everybody, and we bonded so much so that we all still have our group chat that we actively talk in today. That's all that I have about for field training. Thank you for listening to me ramble for field training part 1 and 2. Please, if you're going to Maxwell this summer, stop freaking out. You're literally all gonna do so amazing. If you have any more questions, comments, or concerns, leave them down in the comments. I'm pretty sure I answered all of y'all's comments in the last video, but if you have more, leave them there or leave them here and I'll get back to you. As always, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel and come with me through the rest of my military journey. All right, thanks for watching.